SubhanAllah, humanity has not seen a history that is as enriching and as profound and as beautiful as that of ours as Muslims, the Muslim Ummah, the empire, right? I mean, you have events that shape the way the world is today. You have characters that walk this earth, who defied all odds and did things that we could only dream of doing, to make sure that the deen was protected, to make sure that you and I, hundreds of years later, could have access to this deen and practice it the right way, to learn from their lessons, to understand their experiences, and to try to embody their characteristics. SubhanAllah. And you and I take pride in this, don't we? But then again, how much of these people do we really know? If you look at the reality today, most of us are very familiar with Hollywood actors and actresses, people who read off scripts and pretend to be characters that they are not on the screen to bring about what they call entertainment in the lightest way possible, to make sure that we laugh and we feel good, and so we start to like them. We like their characters, but then we mistakenly think that those characters are them in reality, when perhaps that could be very, very far from the truth. These people don't necessarily have a code of ethics, they don't have morals, they don't have the guidelines and ideals that we try to embody as Muslims, yet we praise them and we put them on a pedestal, when in reality there are men and women who shook the ground. Their names echoed throughout history, and they still echo today, subhanAllah, and yet we know so little about them. That's a sad reality. To know who you are, you need to know who you once were. And as a Muslim, it doesn't matter where you're from, what your culture is or your background. The fact that you're a Muslim, you subscribe to the model, and this history is now your history. And it becomes incumbent upon you and I as Muslims to learn this history, to know who these people were. Because we look around the world today and we see the state of the Muslims, we see the state of the Ummah, and it's heartbreaking. That's a sad reality. But also Allah says in the Quran, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ, that indeed Allah will not change the state of affairs of a people until they themselves change. And so when we look at the Ummah and we say, well, there's a problem, you know what the problem is? The problem is you. The problem is me. Because we are part of that Ummah. And until we change, how can we then expect others to change? How can we then expect the Ummah to change? And so then we say, well, change takes you out of a comfort zone. It involves difficulty, because you are going down a path that you are not used to. But why would one do that? Why would you want to change? There must be a motivation. There must be a reason, a strong enough goal that would make you get off the couch and try to do something different, to become a better person. There has to be a motivation, and that motivation can be found when we study the characters of these people, when we study the deen and understand the depth of our history, when we understand why they had the golden age of Islam and why we have fallen so far behind, subhanAllah. And one day we will come back, and that's promised. We know that. But to get to that goal, we need to take an active role, and that's the reality. And so of those people, the Sahaba, who were around the Prophet ﷺ, who protected him, who defended him, who stood by his side, there were 10 who were promised Jannah while they were alive. Imagine that. A person who is promised, guaranteed, a first-class ticket to paradise while they were alive, because of the characteristics that they embodied, because of the people they were, because of the roles that they fulfilled, because of who they were. Isn't that fascinating? Imagine that. You're guaranteed Jannah. So what did these people do? Who were these people? How did they get such a privilege? The Prophet ﷺ promised them Jannah. So let's name them first of all. We start with Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, Siddiq, Umar ibn al-Khattab al-Faruq, Uthman ibn Affan, Dhun Nurayn, Ali ibn Abi Talib, Asadullah. Then you have Zubayr ibn Awam, Talha ibn Ubayd, Abdul Rahman ibn Auf, Sa'id ibn Zayd, and then finally Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah. These 10 men were guaranteed Jannah. Fascinating. And I'd love to explore who these people were, just to touch upon, to get an idea of who these real heroes were, real men who shaped the world we know today. Those men who are meant to be our role models, not some Hollywood actor, not some person reading off a script. The verses, when they were revealed in the Quran, the audience of them were the Sahaba, and of them were these 10 people. And of the Sahaba, Allah says, كُنْتُمْ خَيْرَ أُمَّةٍ أُخْرَجَتْ لِلنَّاسِ تَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَتَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنكَرِ, that you are the best of nations revealed to the people. You would enjoin what is good and forbid what is evil. Isn't that fascinating? Those people were the best of the people. We belong to that history. We belong to that ummah. So why fall short of such a beautiful privilege? Now why these 10 people? There were Sahaba, there were other than them, and they're all great. Everybody has their level, right? But these 10, when the world hesitated, they stood firm. When the world doubted, they believed. And when the Prophet ﷺ called, they answered. When Islam needed protectors, they stepped forward. These were men of intelligence, honor, strength, dignity, and honesty. These were men who had the characteristics, the ideals that you and I hope to have. And inshallah, I'd like to invite you to join me as we try to briefly explore the lives of these people, who they were, the main highlights of their stories, so that we could try to get a glimpse into who we once were as Muslims and who we can one day become, inshallah. Posting lives every other day, inshallah, on TikTok as time permits, for about an hour at a time, to touch on the lives of these 10 great men. And I'd like to see you there, inshallah. Barakallah fikum. Take care. Assalamu alaikum.